Welcome back to episode 123 of Tall Boy Radio. It's just the three of us tonight, so we're going to jibber jabber about who knows what. But before we do that, it's only right, it's only proper, and it's only courteous to introduce the other two guys who are here with us tonight.
Yeah, evening, guys. It seems a bit weird, actually, just the three of us. It seems like it's been a while. We've had a sort of a series of podcasts with various guests on, but it's great just the three of us. Love to chat as always with the lads. And tonight, there you go. Look at that beauty. So I am drinking Leffe out of TBR podcast, and that one actually says TBR podcast as opposed to Tura Odd Ast or whatever Andy's glass says. So yeah, looking forward to this. Don't know where it's going to go. Don't know what we're going to talk about, but we'll find out in an hour's time.
Nice one. I always think when you're drinking that beer, Gaz, and Andy when he drinks it too, we don't have left turns, we have left turns.
I like that.
Andy?
Hi. I'm on the old Pyrat triple. I have a Pyrat glass.
Ooh, nice.
I don't know where my camera's going, but my TBR glass is a European one. That's why it's spelled a bit funny.
Is that? Oh, okay. It's Litura podcast. Is that what it is? Is it like, yeah? Got all continental on us.
It's from that time we were popular in Poland. We just took the vowels out. Sorry, Poland. Right, what I'm drinking tonight, actually, no, I'm not drinking beer. I've been fascinated by some of the cocktails that are available out there. So the first set I picked up are these, which are a very small can, as you can see, because they're from Tesco's, okay? So they're in their sort of 4 for the price of 3 range. You normally get like your gin and tonics for about 5-6%. But these are like premium brand cocktails. So they're about £4. And this one is an espresso martini, which I've just tried. And I've got to tell you, it's pretty decent. And that one is 14.9%. But you don't get very much of it. I'll tell you about the other things that I've ordered. I ordered some Neo cocktails. You've probably seen them advertised on Facebook. So these can get posted through your door. This one set me back. I think it was £20 for 3. They're a little bit more expensive, but again, they're a premium brand. Got that higher percentage as well. So I'll be cracking one of these out next. I'm quite excited to try those. And then finally, I'm going to finish off. Probably seen these as well, advertised in the Telegraph, 6.3%. £10 it was for 4 of these Bloody Marys. Not a huge fan of Bloody Marys, but I'll give it a go. I'm told these are very, very good. And I've paid the extra £3 to have the salt that goes around the rim, because who doesn't love a little bit of rimming?
Hey.
So tonight, yeah, I thought when we had Brad and Ryan and Dick on from the Pub Time podcast, we let them take over, and they took us down some interesting directions. And they certainly, Brad himself, believed that we were placed on this planet by aliens, and that the people's belief in God could be stemming from that we are looking towards a higher power. I don't want to get too deep about this, but I thought I've written down and I've researched 6 different reasons or explanations as to how we're on the planet. We're going to take a look at each one, decide ourselves how valid we think they are, and see if any of them sort of ring true for us. So the first one I'm going to share, probably the one that's most widely believed by people on planet Earth, is that we were placed here by some form of God. Which type of God it is, I don't know. Whether it is the God that our Christian religion believes that we have here in the UK, or are there many gods of Hindu. And I don't really know much about Sikhism, so I'll stop there. So what about you guys? What are your thoughts on the ultimate idea of religion? Whether we were placed here by a God?
I'm not massively sort of religious. I suppose a bit more of a facts. I deal in facts. Thanks, Rafa. I don't know. I can't see there being this overarching. I get that people need to believe in something, and maybe people will believe in something, and there's lots of people who do believe in God, and there's lots of things that happen that maybe can be attributed to God, and you look at miracles and all this, that, and the other and stuff. So I get that, but nah, not for me. I'm assuming that one of the things that we're going to talk about later is what I believe in, but yeah, religion, no, not not for me. I've never massively been religious. Family have never massively been religious. Parents not hugely religious. I've worked, through my time with lots and lots of people that are devoutly religious and, church every Sunday and praise the Lord and but nah, not for me. No, not really.
Fair play. Just remember you sat here with a man of the cloth here as well now, Gary.
So do you believe in God then?
No, but that's not the point. I'm already
just to throw that out there.
No, interesting enough, actually, I've been asked to do a christening in a couple of weeks' time. We'll get onto that maybe a little bit later.
Okay.
What about yourself, Andy?
I'm not religious, so but I don't know whether it's the copious amount of alcohol I've had in my later years and all these films start like blurring in. But like, I think I like the idea of, I think it's like sci-fi films do it where, like some aliens done something here, dropped us off or whatever, and they're like classed as gods when really they're just like, like us, just beings from another planet or whatever. I always wonder whether that's like the thing. We just sort of forgot all this knowledge down the line as we progressed.
And I suspect that might be something that's one of the other 5, was it, that you said, or however many there were? I suspect that might be one of the ones that maybe we're going to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But you're not convinced then it could be some form of celestial deity who's placed us here to, as his offspring, we're made in his image. That's not something you buy into then. Is that and realistically, when people tell you that they're religious, do you judge them a little bit and thinking, it seems a little bit fictional, this?
I don't know him for very long.
I try not to judge. I'm pretty open-minded. I'd like to think I'm pretty accommodating to people's sort of thoughts and opinions, and I would never, obviously in the profession I'm in, I'd never look to indoctrinate people and sort of say, this is the way and that's the only way and all that. I do believe that people have the right to believe what they want to believe, and I believe that people have got the right to say what they believe, and as long as they're not sort of effectively forcing it down your throat, and they're not trying to sort of make you believe against your own will type thing, and they're trying to sort of bend your mind to that. I think with freedom of speech is great. I think people are entitled to their views and their opinions, and I just don't hold that view. Is religion? This is what I was going to ask you. Is religion? And I know effectively hereditary. So if your parents were hugely religious, does that mean you become religious? And if your grandparents and then your parents, do you understand what I'm saying? So if your great-grandparents and your grandparents and your parents were religious, or does that mean that you are potentially more likely to then become religious yourself and follow their views and their opinions? Or neither of my parents were hugely religious, didn't come from a hugely religious family. I'm not religious. My brother's not religious. So I don't know.
Well, it's funny you mention that about it being hereditary, because there is some truth in that. When you think about a giraffe, right, when it's born, nice synchronized drink in there as well, chaps, if you watch it on YouTube, that was absolutely perfect. But if you think about a giraffe when it's born...
Oh, I'm not going to go in.
Yeah. Don't try and go toe-to with Andy. It won't end well, yeah.
Yeah, don't go on. No, that never has ended well, and it never will end well.
It doesn't. It's never ended well for me, So when a giraffe's born, within a couple of hours it can walk, because it's all sort of inbuilt into its DNA and its understanding of how it walks. With human beings, it is believed that it could be passed on down the old genetic chain, that we are pre-programmed to believe in a God. Now, whether there's some people that believe that basically a human mind, a very inquisitive thing, needs to understand absolutely everything, and when we come across something that we don't understand, well, this idea fits that. There's an almighty power that makes this happen. That's the only real explanation for it, and that's a little bit why we believe. But that sort of reverence to God or a religion, that is passed on through our DNA, it's generally believed, in the same way that it is for a giraffe to walk.
But is the physical attribute of being able to walk and breathe and talk and speak a language and blink and all of those sort of subconscious things, that they're physical things, aren't they? So Are you saying that actually the argument is that being passed down through your family generations, and hereditary is thinking in a particular way, because does that not then take away the argument of sentient beings that are conscious, that have the ability to think for themselves and all of that sort of thing? Because effectively what you're saying is we don't think for ourselves because it's hereditary, so therefore we're predisposed to think in a certain way.
We do think for ourselves because it's our brain. But there is that inbuilt programming, and like you say, there are physical things like walking and talking and things like that we do. But everything like that is done. It's controlled by that little central processor user. It's sat between your two ears, your two different sizes, as it happens in my case. But that's another matter. That's one for another episode. So yeah, so it is in many ways in there. When you think about physical movement, it all comes from here. It's electrical signals that are sent from there to your body to make your arm do this, to make my chin move, to make the voice come out and the vocal cords vibrate and what have you. So in many ways, yeah, it is. It's all centrally controlled. We do have freedom of thought, and it's our decision. Like I say, it may very well be the case that we are pre-programmed to believe, but guess what? There's 3 people here who aren't buying it, really.
So does that mean that we, without knowing it, we're effectively going against the grain of our genes, and we're going against the grain of our sort of predecessors' family, sort of family history and all of that sort of thing?
Well, we're not just doing it willy-nilly, though, are we? Like you say yourself, you've had information presented to you that contradicts that statement.
Yeah, potentially. So I suppose growing up, whether it's discussions with family or whether it's primary school, it's secondary school, it's mates, it's TV, it's nowadays social media and all of that sort of. Well, I mean, Christ knows what you learn from social media these days, but I suppose I don't know whether or not all of those things weigh up, and you're thinking, now what a crock of shit, or we have the ability to think for ourselves. I do struggle with that concept that your thought processes are predisposed and effectively are hereditary. I struggle with that, I'll be honest with you. I get the fact that if your great granddad, I don't know, blue eyes, blonde hair, and your dad's blue eyes, blonde hair, then you are potentially, just because of genetics, and that's been proven. I'd go back to the science bit, the fact bit. It's fact. You have the same as parents, grandparents, and your lineage, and I struggle a little bit more with the thought process is the same as your parents, your grandparents, and so on. Because you go back in the day, and so therefore, if your grandparents, so this is the first left turn, but so what are you saying then, that if we're predisposed to think about religion in a certain way and that's hereditary, does that mean that and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that any of our great grandparents, great grandparents were, but if they were racist and had various slaves, that we should think that that's actually okay, because actually that's what a great grandparent, it opens up all sorts of uncomfortable thoughts for me that, God, we're going pretty deep here, but we
have to say we wouldn't.
No, but it opens up all sorts of questions that I would have as to. So is hereditary just the physical things, and it's your genes, and that makes you act in a certain way? You're either sporty, you either blink in a certain way, your eyes are a certain colour, you walk in a certain way, or is it as you said, the sort of the pathways that are built within your brain, and not only are they telling you to think, but they're telling you what to think and how to think? I don't know. I struggle with that a little bit.
Well, I'm cracking on to my next cocktail now. I have to say that espresso martini was absolutely fantastic. I'm now cracking open a old-fashioned by Neo. I'll tell you how that goes in a minute. But yeah, I think the other side of it as well, guys, is nature or nurture. So you talk about the influences that our grandparents had on us, and they did. And I think when we had Dave on, we discussed about racism. And actually, sometimes being exposed to racism and something like that, like a racist grandparent, I'm not saying any of my grandparents were racist, and I don't really think any of them were. But if you're exposed to them, it can actually turn you against it.
Yeah,
you can you can turn away from it.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I think there's a relatively valid argument for that. That you see something, you perceive something, you think that for whatever reason that's wrong, and therefore you then move away from that. Yeah, I get that. I get that.
Well, we'll move on to the next one then, which is one I suspect might fall right into your ballpark, actually, guys, and probably Andy. I don't know. Evolution. Me, you, Andy, we're all monkeys.
Yeah, that's right. That's where I stand, or sit, or swing, or climb, or whatever it is that you want to say. I'm very much a Darwin guy. I think all those millennia ago that there was an environment that allowed a combination of materials to fuse to then create your first single cell amoeba, and then from that you then effectively you go to the whole Darwinism evolution bit, and you go through that sort of survival of the fittest, and things get weaned out of various, you only have to look at our coccyx. So for example, our coccyx, it's actually not used at all in the human physiology. It's not needed at all, but that obviously is the base of our tailbone.
my coccyx has seen some action.
Didn't you break your coccyx at some point?
Yeah, I did,
yeah. But, so you look at that, and obviously in my opinion, one of the next evolutionary steps will be there will be children born without a coccyx. There's absolutely no reason for it to be there. Physiologically, anatomically, it's just not used. It's just a throwaway of when we were, we descended from apes and primates and all that, and effectively that's your tailbone, and that's what people know it as. And I genuinely think one of the next evolutionary steps will be that children will be born without it, because actually it's not needed. So that absolutely very much sits in my ballpark. I am I'm a science stats sort of. I much prefer that than the something up there that does this and casts a magic spell and everything happens, and on the 7th day he created this. It's like, not so sure. Oh no, day 7 was rest day, when it didn't he create loads of things on day 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or whatever. Yeah.
On the 7th day he created TBR. Andy, what about yourself?
Well, on the 7th day he created Left.
Yeah.
I'll just paraphrase what Gaz said and say yes. Yeah, I think evolution makes sense, doesn't it?
Does it?
Yeah.
Does it not?
I don't think it does. No. I always remember.
Come
Dougie
on, then
Barnett,
enlighten us,
probably
Reverend
quoted
Beans.
this.
Come on.
Yeah, well, I always remember Dougie Barnett, and you obviously remember Dougie Barnett. He was a science teacher. Strangely enough, actually turned out to be a very good friend of my father-in-law's growing up. Which is a bizarre set of circumstances when I discovered that.
He was mad as a box of frogs, but
he was, but he was quite scientific and quite intelligent, which led to his sort of odd behaviour at times. But
sorry,
I don't know. Hopefully he's listening. Let's just leave it at that.
Is he still alive? Is he alive still?
I was just glossing over that. But I always remember him at school, and Richard Pollard. Remember Richard Pollard giving a talk in the lecture theatre? Richard Pollard, he's now a man of the cloth. He is a reverend, a proper one, not an internet one like me. And he has his flock that he tends to, and I'm good friends with him on Facebook, and I love seeing the stuff that he does. He may be unfriending me after this episode, but Dougie Barnett was at a talk that he gave about religion, and I do remember saying, we were saying, "Go on, Dougie, it's not science, though, is it? This?" And he said, "What? Think about it, lads. We are so vastly different to anything else on this earth. Do you really believe we descended from apes?" And I thought,
we're not vastly different, though, are we? Because it's proven that we have 99 point whatever it is, or 99% the same genetic makeup as primates.
A banana. There's a banana.
Pigs.
And pigs, yeah.
Yeah, and a banana. So we used.
We've just been brainwashed. Then the whole human race has just been brainwashed to think that Darwin was a load of baloney, and actually we don't descend from apes. And
in essence, though, we're still taking somebody else's word for it. When you think about the knowledge that's passed on to us, in the past, they would say, "Well, God is the truth," because that's what they've been told. Whereas now, we think Darwin's the truth.
But hasn't there been more? Effectively, hasn't there been more? I say fact. Has it not been proven that because of testing and this and that? Nobody's ever proved that Jesus exists, that God exists. I know it's meant to be existential. You don't see me, you don't do this, you don't do that, and the Turing Shroud and baloney and all of that sort of thing. But
well, I think the Turing Shroud has been disproved. But
yeah,
in
that's
terms of Jesus
point.
existing, somebody called Jesus did exist at that time and did give those talks.
But
There's evidence to support that.
Are you not a believer that this one guy just sat under a tree somewhere back in ancient times? It was once upon a time there was a man called Jesus, and then all of a sudden that just became,
Listen, I'm not saying that.
I was just gonna say, science is like a moving target, though, isn't it? Like, if you look at what's fact today, like sky's blue or whatever, and the leaves are green. Like tomorrow, it'll be something different. So it's a bit hard to prove. I think a lot of stuff.
But
like this,
I get your point. You can only, I suppose, prove what science is capable of proving now today, and in 20 years' time they might be able to prove something different, and therefore that's what the next generation will think. I suppose I get that science might move on, but we have taken genetic. So you have, and Bo are your cousin, and you've taken DNA tests.
Or is he? We'll discover that on a later episode.
Oh well, okay.
Give anything away.
Okay, but so you believe in those results, yeah?
I do.
Okay, so therefore the same scientists that do your DNA test did a test on humans and monkeys and proved that we effectively are genetically 99% the same. Do you not believe that then?
I'm not saying I don't believe it, but at the same time, we're 97% the same DNA as a banana. So clearly there's a makeup there that exists amongst every fabric of being. And if that were then placed by a God here who had made everything, is it not feasible that that's that DNA that he built himself and placed here, and we're just discovering it and playing God and tampering around with it? I don't know. And listen, I'm not saying I believe in God, because truthfully, I find it that a little bit of a stretch. But what I also find a bit of a stretch is that we weren't put here by something else. And when I say that
did you say we were or we weren't put here by something else?
No, I find it hard to believe that we weren't put here by something else.
Okay,
whether that be a God or an alien or what have you. But when I say I'm a minister of the ULC, the reason why I chose the ULC, Universal Life Church, is because it's non-denominational. It's not important. The actual religion aspect, you don't have to believe in God to be a minister. You have to believe in doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You could totally believe in the theory of creation, that everything else is bunkum, but you have to believe in doing the right thing. And that, for me, is the message that religion sells. At the same time, it then tries to separate you from its money, and that's the church side of things. Don't get me wrong, I had to pay to be a minister. The ULC ain't innocent on that front, but that's church and religion, two different things, I think.
Yes, and I think you go back to historic days and crusade days, and the church was probably, I'm not going to say now because it'll be slanderous, but potentially back in the day, it's one of the most corrupt bloody institutions around, and they went on crusades, and they paid people to go and rape, pillage, and slaughter, and everything. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, totally.
I mean, it's a huge, and we could have guests on from every corner of the globe, and they could either all agree, they could all disagree, and it is one of the massive sort of points of division is. Are you creationism or your evolutionism? It's that, isn't it? Do you believe in a sentient being? It might not be God, or do you believe in the evolutionary tree? And I know that you're going to move on to perhaps 2 or 3 other potential. We were dropped on the planet by a greater being, an alien race that has, I don't know, perhaps more technology, more superior knowledge, and we're just an experiment in a test tube to them type thing. And I'm assuming that's one of the 3. That's. I know lots of people will talk about that, but I don't know. I'm very much, and I'm yet to be persuaded otherwise. But I'm very much in the evolutionary camp sort of thing. So
that's fine. I think Andy's in that camp with you as well.
I love being in a camp with Andy.
Like I said earlier, I do like the idea of like an alien doing it, dropping us off or whatever. But I don't know why. When you talk about nanas, then I was thinking, do you think if aliens dropped us off, do you think it'd be a joke if they went, let's make this fruit like phallic and share the same DNA? Let's watch them eat that.
Yeah.
Some really sick ass alien that's up there. They got a real wicked sense of humour. He's just like,
probably like a guy with ginger beard, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, when God made you in His own image, maybe He does have a ginger beard. Who knows?
Everybody's made in God's image. Oh, anyway, whatever. That's a load of baloney. Anyway, move on.
Well, just one quote I'll give you, and is it a factual quote? Absolutely not, because it's Lisa Kudrow, Phoebe from Friends, when she's giving Ross a hard time about it, and she says to him, "Look, there was a time when the brightest minds on this planet believed that the Earth was flat. Are you not telling me that there is the slightest possibility you could be wrong?"
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I always think I remember seeing that, and that one again hit home with me as well a little bit. And also, I was watching an interview with Ricky Gervais the other day, and he's been interviewed by a chap who was religious, and Ricky Gervais says, "Look, hang on a minute, you believe in one God. There's pretty much about 3,000 gods out there. You know, you're choosing to not believe in 2,999 gods. I'm only believing in one, or not believing in one more than you. So really, who's in the wrong here?" And it's very true when you think about it in that respect. That the idea of a God is a little bit far-fetched, but
people have bent the idea of God.
People have bent it to make people do what they want them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so you look at God, you look at Allah, you look at. Come on, help me out with the sequel. What's the come on, lad.
I was going to say Thierry Henry then, but we don't go down that route.
Zlatan.
Zlatan. So in terms of in terms of as a Hindu, you've got the likes of there's a dude with the elephant head. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I can't.
Krishna.
Krishna.
Well, Krishna was one. Krishna wasn't the dude with the elephant.
No, he wasn't.
Vishnu. There's Vishnu. Hare Krishna is actually, I think it is a branch of Hinduism. I'm not sure. But again, I've actually read the Bhagavad Gita. I started to read that, which is the Krishna one. And it starts off, it was like, and Krishna had 9,000 children. How do we know this? Because he told us. Okay. You're not pulling me in here. Give me something a little bit stronger. I can tell you that. Ancestry will tell me I don't.
Yeah, well, or will it? That's for a later episode.
So the next one, number 3. This is one that maybe you'll buy into a little bit more. Andy's already toyed with the idea already. That we were put here by an alien race. Thoughts?
I'm potentially more on board with that than the one God as such. I just think, and I've mentioned it on a couple of previous podcasts. I think statistically, for us to be the only sentient life out there is a crock of shit. I think you look at millions of galaxies and millions of stars in it. There has to be other life, just because we can't find it on our 6 planets next, literally living next door to us. So I think statistically, there has to be other life somewhere in the universe. And bearing in mind, we can probably only see whatever the small percentage, 5% of the known universe or whatever currently, it's meant to be huge. So then you start to think, well, not every not every planet will have developed at the same rate. So there'll be lots of planets out there that have life that are less developed than us, and there'll be lots of planets out there that are more developed than us. And if they're more developed than us, then you start going into the sci-fi stuff, your Star Wars, your Star Trek, your light speed and all of that. Why not? Why would that not be the case? So I'm definitely more on board with that, actually, than God, if I'm honest.
Well, funnily enough, actually, they're discussing UFOs in the Senate. I know we're saying it's this week. If you listen to this, it was 2 weeks ago. It might be absolutely nothing. They could totally debunk it. But they're actually discussing alien life forms in the Senate in the USA on, well, I think it might have actually been happening today as we're recording this. Andy, what are your thoughts on this? You sort of toyed with this idea at the start.
Well, yeah. It's. I was just thinking that it's a funny topic because like I said, I don't believe in ghosts, but then it's like, do I believe in aliens? I don't know. But there is a lot of like in the news lately about all the US files getting unclassified because they're over so many years old, and a lot of it's coming out of these like spherical objects flying around in the sea and all that rubbish. So, yeah, could be. I think Stargate. I don't know if you remember the Stargate film. Like,
I remember Stargate. Yeah. Jason Spade. Well. James Spader. Is that who it was? Was he Stargate guy? Can't remember.
It was.
Yeah. And that was where they had basic portals between different planets and this. Yeah.
And one planet they went to is the Egyptian gods, so like Ra and all them, and they were just like giant people. Well, more powerful people. But over here, they're classed as gods, and they're just like an alien race. So it's sort of like, there's quite a few films that toy with that. So
I just think you look at. I struggle again, being a fact person. I struggle with, the Earth is the only planet out there that has the constituents of life. And I know they're talking about did Mars once have the atmosphere did Venus, in our solar system, and they've looked at that sort of thing. But who's to say that actually life would be as we know it? And actually we're oxygen, we breathe oxygen, there's elements of nitrogen and all that sort of stuff in our atmosphere. But who's to say that there aren't aliens out there that actually don't breathe oxygen, nitrogen, and they actually are a completely different race? I just the numbers when you look at it from a math statistical point of view, I just think there has to be life somewhere else. There has to be, and therefore, when you look at that, then you start to extrapolate that argument and say, and as I said a minute ago, some of that life will have evolved quicker than we have, and others won't, and therefore life that's evolved much quicker than us have developed the means of transport to travel huge distances very quickly. So why not?
Well, here's a potential why not. Okay, so we discussed this in the episode that we did with Brad and Ryan and Dave. Well, and you said, well, why couldn't they travel here? I mean, the only reason that would stop them from traveling here is if scientifically it were impossible. Yet, then, here's the thing. So when someone claims, you see a newspaper article that someone has been abducted by aliens, what's your first thought on that?
Okay.
Do you believe it?
I mean, possibly not. However, go on, Andy.
I was going to say, genuinely, you're led to believe it's all like crazy people in it, but is that a conspiracy thing of you want you to think that it's a crazy person?
Yeah, it's like some wild ass redneck in the middle of wherever that's, it's just like a wacko, isn't it? That's what you first think. But then when you start thinking, and this is what I think, and I said this relatively recently, if a guy in America says the same thing as a woman in Australia, that says the same thing as a child in Canada, that says the same thing as a bloke in India, and all of a sudden you've got all these people in all of these parts of our globe saying exactly the same thing, that have absolutely no means of communicating with each other whatsoever, and even now via social media, no means of communicating whatsoever, and they all say exactly the same thing, and they give an account that almost is, it's dot the I's, cross the T's, identical. Yeah. You've got to start to think, have they? Haven't they?
Cattle mutilations and things like that. We don't really get an explanation for that kind of stuff, do we? Anything satisfactory?
We don't. It's just a bit. I mean, cattle mutilations are and crop circles and all the conspiracy theories, sort of swept under the carpet a bit, aren't they?
Well, our good friend Dave, who actually I did invite to be on this episode as well, because I know on something like this he'd have a lot to say about it. But I invited him to be on. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it. He's busy today. He's at conference. I don't know if it's an alien conference like Andy goes to, but he is at a conference. And he messaged us and he sent me an article about people who had confessed to doing the crop circles that we, I think the ones that we were actually talking about now. And I kind of think that, unfortunately, there are enough people who are out there who just like to do dumb stuff like that, and create and make a name for themselves. And fair play to them. It's like the guys who paint the face on the tree and all say, nobody really knows who they are. It's almost a little bit of mythology, but it's quite nice at the same time. But in terms of
circles don't make sense though, do they? Like if you're going to have a ship that flies through space and it's just leaving these stupid spiral shit in some crop site.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It should be burnt or.
But again, you look at the crop circle conspiracy bit, and you sort of say they've tried to recreate the crop circles, and it's perfectly, and I mean, perfectly spherical. And you look at the ancient Egyptian pyramids, and we spoke about this semi recently about actually they're within, is it like 0.001 degree out, and the length of them is 0.001 of a centimetre or metre or whatever it is. And you think, Jesus, how did they do that back in the day? Crop circles are the same, because it's like, and they start to talk about, is it effectively like wind phenomena? So is it like mini cyclones and this, that, and the other making them, because they are literally perfectly spherical? So, and they've tried to recreate them, and they can't create them in the level of detail that we perceive them. And yes, you might get the odd guy that says, yeah, I did it, but did he? Don't know. I'm not sure.
So up there, so far when we're rating them, we're saying God, probably not. Evolution, you guys believe most likely. Aliens, if someone put us here, then it
more likely than God. Less likely than evolution, more likely than God.
Okay. The next one, option number 4, and we're sticking with aliens, okay? The lizard people, and they're still here, and they live amongst us. And I will just say, before we crack into this, the old-fashioned that I had from Neo, that is an absolute gem of a cocktail. Absolute beaut. Really, really enjoyed that. And I've cracked open now the Moth Margarita, which is again about £4 from Tesco. So I'm looking forward to trying that. Anyway, sorry, go on, guys. Lizard people.
I don't, if I'm honest, I don't know a lot about the lizard people, other than they are still amongst us. They are still watching us. They live and breathe amongst us, and they're just not known to us effectively.
This is it. Have you ever seen the film They Live with Rowdy Roddy Piper?
I have, but a while ago.
Andy, I can tell by Andy's laugh he has.
No.
Dude, watch it. It's brilliant. Basically, Rowdy Roddy Piper gets these glasses that when he puts them on, he can see who are lizard people and who aren't. And basically, there's one bit, he goes on for about 15 minutes where his pal in there is a fight scene where he's just saying, put on the glasses. And then they have a bit of a fight and he said, no, I'm not putting on the glasses. And then they fight again.
Wasn't the series, was it V? Weren't they? So they were lizard people, and didn't they come to Earth, and they effectively were destroyers of worlds, and they were coming to take our water or salvage water, something to water, I think, in the series. Have you ever watched V, Andy?
A bit of it. I did want to watch it when it was on, but I don't think I watched much TV.
So they were lizard people, and I can't remember how the humans sort of found out that they were lizard people. Wasn't there an infiltrate? Anyway, I can't. But they were lizard people effectively, and then but when you looked at them, they had did they look human, and they had human skin, but then did they flake, and they were actually lizard people. So if I'm honest, I don't know a massive amount about it.
Well, this is one of these ones that you have to believe that people like politicians, the likes of Boris Johnson, the likes of Joe Biden, are all lizard people or ruled by lizard people, the people who are really in charge of the planet. And let's face it, we talked about Joe Biden being one of the most powerful men on the planet. He isn't, you know what I mean? He isn't. There's people that control him, whether those are his advisors or people above that, like large industries, the likes of the Bill Gates and what have you, depending on what you want to believe, probably have more say than he does. So you will be looking at someone like Bill Gates is a lizard person, and hopefully you can tell by the expression in my voice that it's not something I massively buy into.
That for me is that's below God. I'd probably more likely to believe that than lizard people, if I'm honest. Having said that, I know that it is a genuine bona fide belief that quite a significant number of people have.
I know people who believe in it. I'm not going to share their names on here, but I do know people who believe in it.
Wow, I'll be speaking to Johnson. Bloody hell, I'll actually... No, I'm joking, John. I'm joking. John, I'm joking. Unless it is you, but no, I'm joking.
It's not John.
But no, yeah, I know that a lot of people believe it. I don't know.
So I mean, we've just discussed like behind what we're told, what we're taught in school, what's been ingrained into our system about that we came from monkeys. We're saying aliens are the most probable other possibility. Do lizard people then are sort of fitting into that category, that these people are aliens and they're still living amongst us, monitoring our behavior and controlling the way that we do. So this idea that the ultra rich and the ultra powerful are a separate race to us. And don't get me wrong, I can understand why people would sometimes feel that, because it does feel like there's different rules applied to them than do to us. But at the same time, it's a stretch to believe that they're an alien population. But we are still expecting to believe that these creatures then came down, put us here and buggered off. Isn't the fact that some of them are still here, potentially, is that not a little bit more likely if I'm playing devil's advocate?
Yeah, potentially, yeah. I get that. If we've said, I'm probably more likely to believe statistically that there could be a race of alien that, populated our planet. It's not that big of a stretch to then think, well, actually, that alien race populated our planet, and there are still some of them amongst us effectively watching what goes on and shaping our society and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, maybe. I get that that's not a huge stretch. It's not something I necessarily subscribe to, but yeah, I get it.
Andy, you would dismiss that one then, I take it.
I was just thinking of, I watched a YouTube video like mid-2000s or something when it's about saying like Queen Elizabeth is a lizard analyst because she blinks differently, and then they showed this like really shit edit of like their eyes going like that way rather than up and down. It just like stuck in my brain. It's awful. Like it's like I could edit better than that. That sort of shit stuck in my head.
One thing I will say about They Live as well, though, and this is something that's rankled with me to this day. If you ever remember Robot Wars, there was a guy on there who gets credited by saying, I came here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm fresh out of bubblegum. Well, that is not from Robot Wars. That's from They Live. That's a Rowdy Roddy Piper line from that film, and that's a great line. And he just walks into a bank and says that with a shotgun in his hand. Legend. Absolute legend.
He was?
He was. Bless him. I'll raise a drink to the guy. So number 5. Now, we're getting a little bit out there now, actually. So number 5, the Earth is a living organism, okay? We know that it is to some degree, that it supports a network of trees and stuff like that. But the thing that's destroying it, the virus on it, is human beings.
The human race. Yeah.
Human race is a virus.
Yeah. What are
your thoughts on that one?
Isn't there a religion where like they think the Earth is like a giant turtle or something like that? And we're just like on its back.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's
there is. I haven't got that one down in my notes.
No, and you look at, and I know that the Amazon rainforest are known as the lungs of the Earth and all of that because of their CO2 and oxygen exchange and all that, and actually without that the Earth would die. So there's an argument, but doesn't, and I don't know, and again it might go back to the scientist point of view, doesn't there have to be 4 out of the 6 constituents of life in order for it to, you have to procreate, breathe, there are certain elements that constitute life, and then the argument is fire alive because it does this and it does this and it does this and so I don't know. I get that you could turn around and say that the planet is alive because of the things that it does, and I get the fact that people are saying that the human species, the human race, are polluters of the planet. I absolutely get that. And without the humans, would the planet thrive? Yes, you would get trees and seas, and without. Is the Earth alive? I'm not sure. I don't know. Not alive. Sorry, not alive in the way that we would perceive life. I suppose is what I'm saying.
A lot of this goes down to perception, doesn't it? And that's interesting. That is interesting. I'm not saying I buy into this one, but it is interesting. Andy, what are your thoughts?
Well, there's like indigenous tribes and all that say that we're put on this planet to not take everything from it, but like nurture it and just give and take. And
we're keepers of the planet, aren't we? That's what they say, isn't it? Yeah.
If you took money away, I think human race would be better at it. But I think because everyone wants money, the big corporations and all that sort of stuff is, well, not destroying the world, but they're big contributors to that, and they won't stop doing it because they make so much money. And
well, there's an argument that they are destroyers of the world because that people chase money, and certain people have it, certain people don't, and those that have it, they spend it lavishly, and those that don't strive to have it. So,
I thought that when I listened back to the episode, and I always do, after I've edited them, I always listen back to the episode just to make sure that what the guys out there listen to sounds okay. And we had Anon, remember Anon we had from Pittsburgh? Yeah. So he described money as a tool and how certain people disrespected it. And I kind of thought then, well, actually, when you think about it, and we're talking about nature and when we developed, if we're talking about we developed from monkeys, well, monkeys don't have money. There is a hierarchy amongst monkeys where the strongest get what they want. Well, the strongest no longer get what they want. The lights and the more muscular ones, like Andy, should be able to take what the heck they want out of there. And then the wimpy ones, like me and Gaz, then we feed from the pears that fall from the tree that the other monkeys don't want. But then humans created something called money, which the weak can control. The likes of Bill Gates can control. The likes of Jeff Bezos, they control the wealth. They dictate to governments what they want. Money's been created out of necessity to separate the real things that people want from the things that people need. And almost it shouldn't be based upon that, because you look in the animal kingdom, it isn't based that way. There is no bartering system. There's no interaction, no financial interaction there. It's something that we have created to separate and to create wealth for some and poverty for others. There's enough food on this planet to feed everybody. But if we have that, then you and I can't walk into a supermarket in the country that we're fortunate enough to live in England. We can't walk into a supermarket and choose which melon we want, which watermelon we want, which grapefruit we want. It's there as an option. And if we don't want it, guess what? It goes in the bin. And to hell, everybody doesn't get to eat. And for me, there's something fundamentally wrong with that.
There's a Reddit. There's a page on Reddit called Anti-Work, and they posted a picture of like a cartoon sort of strip. And it was like a guy who was in a boat with a fisherman, and the fisherman got one fish out for the day, ate it, and sat on the beach all day and just relaxed. And the businessman's like, "Why don't you catch more?" He says, "Well, I only need one. I'm full now. Don't need any more." He goes, "Well, if you catch more, you can sell more. Then you can buy more rods." He goes, "Why would I do that?" And he said, "Or then you can hire more people, get more fish, sell more fish. Then you can buy a house." And then you can like live the life you want to live. He's like, "Mate, I just literally like eat a fish and I'd sit on the beach all day. Like, what else do you want?" And it's sort of like sums up life. I think money's like the goal now, isn't it? It's sort of like you have to. It's unfortunate that you have to. You can't just like live off the land, especially in the UK. There's no like wild camping or anything. Like you've got to be registered on and have a house or rent or whatever, and you got to earn money and all this sort of stuff. You can't just like go live in the jungle or whatever, or in the brewery.
But you look at it out there, and there are, as you mentioned earlier, there are indigenous tribes, and in your South Americas, in Africa, in probably in Australia. You look at your Aboriginal people that will effectively live off the land, and in their village that they live, there's no money, and effectively it's all we will go and forage to collect enough food for all of the villagers to eat, and as long as we forage enough food for all the villagers to eat, hey, we don't need anything else. We've got shelter. Well, we haven't bought it, we've just made it. So we've made it from bamboo, cane and leaves and mud and whatever it may be, and actually we're pretty happy with what we've got, because they probably don't know any different. So therefore, and who's to say actually that they're wrong in that? There are times.
Question.
There are times, during my working week, I think, Jesus, I wish I could be like that. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, we all live in a developed area of the world, and yes, your material things are things that people strive for, and you want to be able to go and afford the things that you want to be able to afford. But is there not an argument to say that the people that live in all these indigenous areas, sure, they're not wrong, are they? Because they have enough to be able to do the things that they want to do, don't they?
You certainly seem happy. And I think that should be the goal. Right then, number 6, and I probably shouldn't be 4 cocktails deep when I start this one, because this one is a doozy. Stick with me, guys. What's your quantum physics like?
It ain't great, I'll be honest with you, but okay, I'm ready to go with you.
Cool. Right. So there's been a quantum experiment that suggests there is no such thing as reality. It's called Wigner's friend theory. So that 2 people can experience the same thing in a different way and still be factually accurate, but they clash, so therefore it would contradict the idea of the reality that we understand. And this is a theory that was put forward in 1961. Stick with me because it gets more complicated. So a chap by the name of Massimiliano Prioratore conducted an experiment in Edinburgh where he created 2 realities in a lab, and these 2 realities are irreconcilable. That is to say, that it's impossible to agree on the objective facts of it. And it's all about the measurement of photons. Are you familiar with the measurement of photons at all and how it's conducted?
Are we talking CERN and all of that, photons, protons, neutrons and all of that, or not? Is this something completely different?
Means nothing to me there, if I'm really honest. So basically, the one guy measured the photons in one way, one guy measured them in another way in a separate lab separately, and then they compared the results, and they didn't match up because they'd done them in 2 different ways, both ways being factually accurate. And if you listen to this and you understand quantum physics, I apologize if I've butchered it, but that is my understanding of it thus far. And the very fact that the 2 things can both be accurate at the same time and yet contradict each other suggests that there is no universal facts. And if the facts don't exist that we can all agree on, then does reality?
Well, you look at, I've got no idea what you've just said for the last 2 minutes, but
me neither.
You look at, okay, and I'm going to go left turn here. You look at Marvel, and you look at the multiverse where you can have lots of similar interactions, and you go back to the old Sliding Doors film years ago, where actually, if you were 2 seconds earlier, you catch the train, and then this happens, and if you're 2 seconds later, you don't catch the train, and this happens, and then you've got this film that goes with the 2 same characters that basically, in their own mind, that happens and that happens. And is that not down to what we spoke earlier about perception, though, and how you perceive things to be? Well, so that's the thing. They both experimented on the same thing. One perceived it and interpreted the results in one way, and another guy looked at it and interpreted the results in a completely different way. And in their own mind, they're both factually correct because they can argue that. Is that what we're saying? So that actually, they're both factually correct.
That's the thing. So ultimately, the way they both present the facts and understand them, they're both correct, but it is down to perception, and yet both perceptions are perceived to be correct. So if you're observing the world from one perception, who's to say that it's wrong? And this is the reason why I saved this one to last, in terms of if I'm perceiving it that a god or a deity placed us here, and you're saying that we were placed here as monkeys and we developed from then, maybe that was always the plan. That's the way that we were. Those are the eggs from which we hatched.
So maybe we're both right then.
That's the question. That is indeed the question.
The film The Matrix, the Wachowski sisters now, they made all the stars read like a couple of books, and one of them was like some psychology book, but the other one was, I can never remember the first word. It was like simulacra or something, and simulation, and that's all about perception of the world and whether we do live in the now or whether we are in a simulation and we're actually like sat in a chair or a lab rat or whatever. And it's this is by a French author from like 1800s, I think, or 1900 and something. But it's quite an interesting theory.
And you can go back to the I suppose is the coincidence type thing. So do things happen for a reason, or do things happen that people perceive to be a coincidence, but actually they're not? If that makes sense. So are they just two things? Are they two things?
Tonight, but yeah, it does make sense.
Are they two things that just happen in parallel to each other, or are they happening because of each other? And that's your coincidence, isn't it? Do they coincide, or do they inside because of each other, and therefore it's just coincidence? And wow, I mean, we're getting into the psychology and this, that, and the other from a distant, dim fog back in the day, but. I don't know. I do think there are certain, in a certain set of parameters, in a certain environment, you could probably get two different people to perceive the reaction of or creation of something, and two different people could perceive that to be different, and therefore they both feel as though that's. And if you then extrapolate that out, then yes, you would have lots of multiverses, multi-coincidences, and this, that, and the other. Then all of a sudden you think, Jesus, am I actually sitting here, or is it just somebody else? And actually, and you get into that whole multiverse gobbledygook sort of thing. And I don't know. I haven't got the intellectual ability to fathom that. I'm not massively into quantum physics, dynamics, and all of that. So I struggle with that. But that's not to say that I don't necessarily think it could potentially be the case. It's just that I don't understand it, and therefore I can't process that information in order to understand it, if that makes sense.
So then, we've heard the 6 options there. We've got an idea then of what most people believe, I think, if you listen to this. So what do you think? What do you think is the most likely of all of those?
I think it's evolutionism. I think there was an environment where certain gases combined, certain elements combined, that then allowed the formation of a single cell amoeba. We then developed to a 2-cell amoeba, a 4-cell amoeba, an 8-cell amoeba, and so on and so on and so on. And then at some point, fish got out of the water and started to walk, and then things started to fly, and then blah, and that whole evolutionism. That's where I'm at.
Andy?
Evolution's leading for me, but I do have that little glimmer of hope, thinking, I wonder whether it is like an alien thing, and we've just forgotten over time that these assholes dumped us on this planet.
Well, for myself, I struggle to believe that we weren't placed here by something. I'm not saying it's necessarily a god. I'm not saying it's necessarily an alien. But what I am saying is I don't understand what it was. And unfortunately, I've missed a lot of your answers tonight because my headphones are playing up. So I've not heard a lot of your answers for the last 5 minutes. But I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say they were brilliant.
I gathered that when he looked at us going, yes, yes.
Yeah.
No, look, I think for me, I think evolutionism is number one. I probably am much more of the alien race 2, God 3. I'm probably slightly lizard people. I'm not a massive fan of lizard people, if I'm honest. I'm probably more the quantum potentially than the lizard people. I don't know.
So I'm going to give you a quote from Existential Nihilism. Are you familiar with that?
Thank God it's not Morrissey.
I didn't get a word. Again, my headphones are playing up, so I apologize. So Existential Nihilism suggests that the... It's not a Morrissey album, no, Andy. I got that. Thank you very much. The Existential Nihilism suggests that the entire population of people on the planet cannot make a difference to the overall universe. And if the entire population cannot make a difference, then we ourselves as a person are entirely irrelevant. So is anything worth worrying about?
No, and you said irrelevant. I would say insignificant. I think in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of our galaxy, solar system, universe, I think we're absolutely irrelevant. I think we believe we're important in our own existence, but actually, when you look at the grand scheme of the development of the universe, I think we're insignificant. And again, I just go back to the statistically, the maths for me, and some people might say, and all would probably say it's just a load of chaos, and it's, we can't be the only people on the planet. We can't be the only life form on a planet. So therefore, if you're saying that actually there's the potential for there to be one other planet that sustains life, there's actually potential for there to be an infinite number of planets that sustain life, and therefore we just become insignificant when you look at the numbers. And that's a horrible thought to end on almost. But yeah, I think we're very important in our own existence and the people we're important to. But actually, in the grand scheme of things, I think we're absolutely irrelevant and insignificant.
Welcome to TBR, where you're significant. But no,
what a dark thought to almost end on. But I hope Andy's going to lighten the mood.
No, wrong person to rely on for that. One thing I will say as well, like when we had the Scottish Alchemists on, we talked about different gin cocktails, and one of the things they mentioned was a Negroni, and they said they weren't a fan. I've got to be honest, this is probably a very good mix of it. I'm not a fan of it, to be honest with you. A little bit disappointed. I'm going to close the night out on the Bloody Mary from Bloody. Like I said, I'm not a fan, but I am quite excited by the bacon twirls that I made earlier. So I'm definitely going to eat them. I'll give this a little bit of a go as we close out. But dude, last week we trailed the idea.
That looks horrendous.
Our friends at Ollie's.com that we're going to do a little bit of a giveaway. So if you want 20% off your order, if you want some salted pretzels that have been flattened, some chocolate pretzels, some olives, or some nuts, get yourself along to their website, which is ollies-ollies.com. It's for UK orders only. And if you use the code word Tall Boy Radio when you're checking out, then you will get 20% off your order, and that's an absolutely fantastic offer for you. And we're going to give away some stuff as well. So I've got a bag of their pretzels, the large bag of the pretzels to give away, and 3 bags of their sweet and spicy nuts that we have here, and we're going to give them away. Now, here on Tall Boy Radio, we enjoy a beer, we enjoy a glass of wine as well from time to time. I can certainly tell you a story when we went out and Gary drank an entire bottle of wine and over Christmas when we had a meal. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say he didn't end up naked collapsing into his bedside table. That's Jenny's word that I'm going to take for it, not his. But we enjoy a glass of wine, we enjoy spirit and all those different type of things. You tell us, what is the drink we should be enjoying on Tall Boy Radio? The best answer, not only wins that stuff. But guess what? We're going to drink it on here. All three of us will enjoy it, and we'll send you the stuff out and give you the credit live on this podcast. There's no closing date for this, but we'll give it a couple of weeks and get in contact with us, and we'll send it out to you.
As long as it's not the Duchess, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Duchess automatically out of the competition. Off you go. So, while I try and force a little sip of this Bloody Mary down my throat, which, as I described to you guys earlier, full circle, was the Duchess of the cocktail world. Don't get me wrong, I've tried these. Actually, if you like Bloody Marys, you'll like this one. I ain't going to slag them off, but I don't like Bloody Marys. Go on, guys, say goodbye.
It's been a sort of strangely, weirdly enjoyable journey through the universe and various other things. I've enjoyed tonight. It's been quite cool. Didn't quite expect to be talking about lizard men and aliens when I first sort of jumped onto the podcast, but hey ho, there we go. You never know where TBR is going to lead you guys, and as I said right at the start of the show, I look forward to where this was going. I'll find out in an hour, and I'm still absolutely no closer to knowing where this is going to end up and where we're going to go. So, really enjoyed it. Yeah, Gaz out.
Cheers, dude, Andy.
Oh yeah, well, we churned through all that. Yeah, what is right, we'll never know, but find out next week if it is. We are right, which we never will be.
So just leaves it to me to wrap it up. Like I say, I tried a few different cocktails on this. And if you check out the blog, and you can see a few links as to where you can pick these up from. And the blog can be found at tallboyradio.com. And that leaves it for me just to say thank you for listening. Join us next week. Well, actually, we will be joined by a guest. Take care.